guys, TrueGreen7 here, and during my years as a PokeTuber, I've noticed that while I've researched the origins of basically every Pokemon, a lot of fans have misunderstood the origins of a few Pokemon and have misinterpreted Game Freak's intentions with a good amount of Pokemonsters. So today, I'm going to talk about 10 Pokemon whose origins and inspirations I think people have misunderstood. Some people even deem these Pokemon as worthless or simply unappealing because their origin flies over their heads, and the Pokemon in this video have been chosen because they are also often mistaken for being based on something they are not. For example, Pineco looks like a pine cone but is a bagworm. The reason Pineco and other Pokemon like Luxray, who is a lynx, not a lion, were not included because they were part of another recent video I made titled Top 10 Pokemon Misunderstood Typings. Since I didn't want to talk about the same Pokemon over and over again, I highly recommend you clicking here to watch that video, or check it out later to see other misunderstood Pokemon. I did leave out a few Pokemon whose names obviously give away their origins, like Oranguru. Some crazy people think it's a gorilla, when it's literally an orangutan. Keep in mind that I made this video for educational purposes. I love teaching people about things I've learned, so please enjoy. Number 10. Ninjask. So at first glance, Ninjask could be mistaken for a bee. I mean, I'm just trying to get into the mind of a child that doesn't even know the origin of the Nincada family. You see, Nincada is based on the cicada nymph. Once they're ready, the cicada nymph will shed their skin and become an adult cicada. These newly shedded cicadas look exactly like Ninjask. They're yellow and black, and the skin that cicadas leave behind are what Shedinja is based off. It even has a hole to indicate where the Ninjask came out of. Now, some people just aren't familiar with this whole process and never associate this origin with Ninjask's design. It even looks like a bush cicada and a yellow Monday cicada, which stay yellow and black throughout their adult life. It's also a ninja, but I hope you at least got that origin from its name. Number 9. Bounsweet. Some people just don't know what kind of fruit this sweet little munchkin is based off, and it kinda ticks me off when someone refers to Bounsweet as an apple, or any other fruit that it isn't based off. Mostly because it looks exactly like its origin, the mangosteen. They're identical. The steen part in Steenie partially comes from this fruit too. It's more appropriate when you realize this fruit is tropical, which Alola's climate would help cultivate. I just think the idea that Bounsweet is just some random fruit would imply that Game Freak is lazy, but they purposely made a tropical fruit Pokemon, which takes heavy inspiration from its origin, including the uncomfortable part about drinking its juices. Number 8. Dunsparce. To many Westerners, this thing is either a super chill bee snake or Game Freak's attempt at making an obscure Japanese legendary creature into a Pokemon. Well, it's kinda both. You see, in the Kansai region of Japan, the location Johto is based off, which is where, Dunsparce can be found, a mythical snake-like being known as the Tsuchinoko roams the land. It's no ordinary snake though, since it's flat, short, and moves about by hopping around like an inchworm, the way Dunsparce does. In some areas in Japan, it's simply called the Bachihebi, or bee snake. Game Freak seems to have taken that nickname literally since Dunsparce is a visual representation of a bee snake. And although Dunsparce is cuter than its real-life counterpart, it is as rare. Mostly because they both don't actually exist and were just the brainchild of Japanese men. Number 7. Typhlosion. People seem to be confused as to what kind of animal Typhlosion is and just call it whatever furry mammal comes to mind. But the animal that it is based off is literally a Typhlosion in real life, minus the fire neck of course. It's based on the honey badger, you sillies. The honey badger is known as the most fearless animal on Earth, as it'll attack anything and fight anyone. Just like Typhlosion, it has its signature dual-colored pattern, which is inverted in Typhlosion's design, and their personalities are incredibly similar, mostly because it's intentional. Perhaps the fire around Typhlosion's neck is a nod to the fact that honey badgers' necks are the thickest and most protected part of their bodies. And I say that because a honey badger's skin is almost impervious to arrows and knives, and its neck is even tougher than that. In my opinion, Typhlosion may just be the most faithful adaptation of a real-life animal in the Pokemon world, while also having some unique design aspects that make it creative. Number 6. Absol. Absol isn't on this list just because people don't know what animal it's based on, because it isn't really based on any specific animal, but it made the list because people misunderstood this Pokemon's intentions. We all know how Absol is mistaken for causing disasters within the Pokemon world, but in our world, people misunderstood why Game Freak created a Pokemon like this. It really does rustle my Burmese when people say Absol is an edgy emo Pokemon as if it was created to be some kind of teen loner that angsty kids would relate to, when in fact this Pokemon is based on a Chinese mythological creature, the Pai Taije, known as the Kutabe or Hakutaku in Japanese, is an intelligent horned white beast that predicted a plague throughout a prefecture of Japan. It told the citizens of Toyama to use its image to ward off the disaster, and since then, it was worshipped as a guardian spirit. Absol's design draws inspiration from various depictions of this beast, including its fur, face, horn, and third eye dot. That's basically all of it. It even resembles a taijutsu, and the scythe could represent the Western depictions of death. So please don't assume that this Pokemon was just made to appeal to angsty teens just because that's a part of your culture or perception of art. Number 5. ZIGZAGOON. It's not a raccoon. I ain't joshin' ya. In the West, it's the tiny raccoon Pokemon, but in Japan, and to the creators, ZIGZAGOON is the tiny raccoon dog Pokemon. A Japanese raccoon dog, or tanuki, is basically related to foxes and not raccoons. They're incredibly common in Japanese folklore and modern-day media. Japanese people know what they are, but most of us Westerners don't. But it's incredibly obvious once you compare the two. They both have the same pattern and massive fur, especially when you notice how different the body shapes of a raccoon and a tanuki are. Only ZIGZAGOON's face resembles a raccoon, while everything about it resembles a tanuki, except for its large, but tanukis are known for drumming on their bellies, and guess which Pokemon is one of the very few that learned the move belly drum? That's right, Snorlax. And ZIGZAGOON. That's actually a huge proof of its origins, since every other Pokemon that learns the move has a reason for their ability to drum on their belly. Number 4. Tornadus and Thundurus. And Landorus kinda. But we're focusing on these two for a reason. The forces of nature, also known as the Kami Trio or legendary genies in the West, may draw inspiration from genies and Jin, but Tornadus and Thundurus are almost completely based on the Kamis or gods of wind and lightning, Fujin and Raijin. This demonic duo is famous in Japan. Thundurus takes basically every design trait from Raijin, including its blue and white coloring, its horns, and its tail, based on Raijin's ring of drums, while Tornadus basically takes the same amount of inspiration from Fujin. The infamous fact that Thundurus and Tornadus basically look the same is kinda justified when you realize Raijin and Fujin are really similar. I swear I used to hate them for this, but now I totally appreciate them for their origin. Number 3. Spinda. I don't think most people even care what Spinda is, but I'll tell ya. Spinda is known as the Spot Panda Pokemon, but since it doesn't really invoke the essence of a giant panda, people often associate it with the Red Panda, which isn't a bear at all and doesn't resemble Spinda at all either. The only reason people think it's a red panda is the fact that they share the same color. By that logic, Simisear is a red panda. Maybe if it was, it would suck less. But in actuality, Spinda is called the Spot Panda for a reason. Because it's a panda. Most specifically, one that resembles the Quinling Panda, whose patterns and colors are very similar to Spinda. The more you know. Number 2. Giratina. So this Pokemon is most often referred to as the Pokemon Devil. Even I do it, because just like Lucifer, he has been banished by God for being a reckless renegade. But if you really think about it, that's pretty much it. Giratina is visually based on a centipede. Once again, I must highlight the fact that if you were to zoom into a house centipede's head, it'll look exactly like a Giratina. There's an infamous monster centipede named Seta in a Japanese fairy tale as well, and Junichi Masuda himself said that Giratina and the Distortion World were created to be a personification of antimatter, basically the opposite of the matter within time and space. This narrative fits way better with the context of Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia, and Cynthia herself corroborates this fact in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. It just makes more sense since the whole tale of Pokemon creation is based on the Japanese creation myths, so there's no reason for them to randomly include a Pokemon based on a Judeo-Christian figure when creating the Pokemon lore inspired by Shinto legend. I mean, other than Arceus, but that doesn't count. That just breaks the pattern, man. Makes no sense. So instead of thinking of it as Satan, think of Giratina as antimatter, which, just like Giratina, is very destructive when it comes in contact with matter, or time and space. Before heading on to number 1, here are some Pokemon that I left out of this video for various reasons. Sudowoodo was left out because, by now, everybody should know that it's not a tree, but in fact petrified wood, and therefore a rock. Entei and the other legendary beasts, who are mistaken for dogs, are based on large cats, but they weren't mentioned because I've talked about their origins so many times. Armaldo is thought by some to be an armadillo when it's clearly an Anomalocharus, an extinct arthropod ancestor. I just think not enough people know its origin, but also not enough people think it's an armadillo. Castform, who is based on the Bozu and water molecule, was left out because it was heavily talked about in a really recent video. Sableye is based on the Hopkinsville Goblin, and while many people wouldn't have known that, most fans understand that it's some kind of goblin. Farfetch'd is known for being a duck, but people also don't get that it's a reference to a Japanese phrase. And lastly, Celesteela is based on the tale of Princess Kaguya, and I highly recommend you Google it later and learn about this famous Japanese story, because it'll help you understand how this Pokemon came to be. But be aware of Naruto spoilers. It just wasn't really mistaken for something else, and this list focused mostly on Pokemon that were misunderstood and thought to be something that they aren't. Like the number 1 entry, which is the Flygon family. So its name may be a reference to the dragonfly, but that's pretty much it. So what if I told you that this ground type family is definitely based on a different animal, one that admittedly looks like a dragonfly but has a completely different life cycle, that is, the antlion. Antlion larvas look like Trapinch, act like Trapinch, and most importantly, probably taste like Trapinch. They both build sand pits that trap other bugs, and that's literally what the ability Arena Trap is. In Japan, the ability is called Antlion, and while as a baby, the antlion doesn't look like a dragonfly, when it grows up, it does, but it's still an antlion, which is what Vibrava and Flygon are, adult antlions. You can even tell since antlions have long antennas and dragonflies don't. Now Flygon may take its dragon-like design as a more literal form of the dragonfly, but the entire evolution line is 100% based on the life cycle of antlions. But if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. And I would absolutely love you if you became a patron to get cool rewards and help support the channel, like the always awesome Nicholas and shiny Zoroark. You could also check out these awesome shirts I made. Either way, it means a lot to me that you're even watching this. So always keep in mind that you can send me messages on Facebook and Twitter. All the links for everything I just said are in the description.